Welcome back to Workplace Q&A. Last week, we heard from Ronald in Porterville, California. Ronald is a customer service manager at a small company. His boss is a sales manager, and his boss's wife happens to work directly under Ronald. Ronald told us that she frequently receives privileges that other employees don't receive. She can leave early, take time off, run personal errands during the workday, and generally has considerably more flexibility than everybody else. Ronald was concerned because his other employees were noticing. My advice to Ronald was pretty straightforward. Don't make it personal. Talk professionally with your boss about the effect it's having on the team and ask for clarification about expectations. Well, Ronald took my advice, and he has written me back. So let's read his follow-up. Ronald's follow-up email, basically reads like this. So he writes, Todd, thanks for answering my question last week. After hearing your response, I decided that I needed to talk to my boss. I didn't accuse his wife of doing anything wrong. I tried to handle it exactly the way that you suggested. I told him that some of the employees had started noticing how much flexibility his wife receives with her schedule. I explained that people were beginning to feel like there were two different sets of rules, one for her and one for everybody else. I told him I was concerned about what it was doing to morale. His response surprised me. He basically told me that he doesn't care what the other employees think. He said his wife has worked for the company much longer than most of them, has years of experience, and has authority within the company that the other employees don't have. He told me that if employees don't like the amount of time she takes off or the flexibility she receives, that's their problem. He also said that what she does isn't any of their business. I tried explaining that I'm the person managing these employees, so I'm the one hearing their complaints. His response was basically, I don't care what they say. Now I feel like I'm in an even worse position. I'm supposed to manage this team and maintain morale, but my boss has essentially told me that one employee is going to have different rules because she's his wife, she's been there longer, and she has more authority. Todd, where do I go from here? Do I keep trying to address this, or do I just accept that this is how the company operates? Ronald from Porterville, California. Wow, Ronald, this is a bad position to be in, buddy. I'm really feel for you. But let me just try to answer this email the best I can. So, Ronald, you did what I suggested. And unfortunately, you got an answer. And it was an answer that you didn't want to hear. It just wasn't the answer you wanted. And there's actually an important distinction here. Your boss may be completely correct about one thing. Not every employee has to have identical privileges. Seniority matters. Position matters. Responsibilities matter. Someone who's been with a company for 15 years may legitimately have benefits or flexibility that somebody who's been there for 6 months doesn't have. And if his wife genuinely has greater authority within the organization, that matters too. So I'm not going to automatically say she's getting something different, therefore it's favoritism. It's more complicated than that. But here's where I have a problem. The statement, I don't care what the employees think. That's where you've lost me. Because if you're responsible for leading people, you should care what your employees think. That doesn't mean employees get to dictate company policy. It doesn't mean every complaint is legitimate. And it certainly doesn't mean everyone gets whatever they want. But morale matters. Perception matters. Consistency matters. And communication matters. But there's another problem. Ronald, your boss has put you in an almost impossible management position. You're apparently responsible for managing his wife, but are you actually allowed to manage her? Think about that distinction. If you're responsible for her performance, but can't question her schedule, if you're responsible for attendance, but can't address her attendance, if you're responsible for enforcing policies, but don't have the authority to enforce those policies with one particular employee, then you're not really managing that employee. You're managing everybody else. And she happens to appear on your organizational chart. That is a completely different situation. And here's where it gets awkward. Let's just throw a little humor into this. Imagine that you're sitting in a staff meeting. Okay, everybody, here are the attendance policies. Employees raise their hand. Does that apply to everybody? Well, everybody whose last name isn't the same as my boss's. That's probably not going into the employee handbook. There's probably not a section that says attendance policy, see page 14. Boss's spouse, yeah, don't worry about it. But that's exactly why family relationships inside businesses can become incredibly complicated. So what would I do now? Ronald, I wouldn't keep fighting the same battle. You've raised the concern. Your boss gave you an answer. At this point, repeatedly confronting him probably isn't going to accomplish anything. Instead, I'd ask for something much more important. Clarification of your authority. I'd say something like, I understand your position going forward, but I just need clarification about what decisions regarding her schedule, attendance, and responsibilities are actually mine to make. That's not confrontational. That's management. Because you need to know where your authority begins and where it ends. And I document that clarification. Not because you're trying to build some secret case against your employer, but simply because 6 months from now, somebody may ask, why didn't you address this? And you need to be able to explain, I did. This was the direction I received. The bigger lesson here, here's what I want everybody listening to understand. Responsibility without authority is one of the worst positions a manager can be placed in. If a company holds you accountable for results, it needs to give you enough authority to achieve those results. Otherwise, you're basically being handed the steering wheel while somebody else controls the gas and the brake. And when that car crashes, everybody asks why you didn't steer better. Ronald, I think you've learned something important about your company. Your boss has told you how he intends to operate. Now you have to decide whether you can successfully manage within that structure. And that's a very different question from the one that you asked us last week.